The distress beacon had been silent for 3 days before Beth Carter found it. She was hauling, or through the neutral belt, a stretch of empty space where neither humans nor Ority dared to claim territory. The war had been raging for 3 years now, and everyone knew the rules. You see an enemy ship, you run or you die. Simple as that. But this ship was not moving. It drifted like a dead leaf on still water, spinning slowly with no lights, no power, no signs of life. That Beth's cargo ship was old and small. She had named it the Wanderer because that was what she did now. She wandered. After losing her husband and daughter in the first Ority raid on the colonies, she had stopped living and started existing. She took jobs that kept her far from other people. She preferred the silence of space to the noise of grief. Her ship's computer warned her to stay away. The vessel was Ority, a scout ship, probably separated from its fleet during the last battle near the mining stations. Going near it was against every military law. Beth should have listened. She should have turned her ship around and continued her route to Outpost 7, where she lived alone in a small habitat unit surrounded by rocks and dust. Instead, she changed course. She told herself it was curiosity. Maybe she wanted to see what the enemy looked like up close. Maybe she wanted to find some piece of technology to sell on the black market. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was tired of being afraid. She was tired of running from shadows. The Ority ship had suffered a reactor failure. Beth could see the damage as she approached. The hull was cracked in several places, and frozen atmosphere leaked out like white fog. Whatever had happened, it had been fast and brutal. She docked carefully and entered through an emergency hatch. The inside was dark and cold. She used her helmet light to navigate through narrow corridors built for creatures taller and thinner than humans. The crew was dead. She found 4 of them in the main chamber. Their scales turned gray and their eyes frozen open. The Ority looked like tall lizards that had learned to walk upright. Their propaganda videos made them seem like monsters, but in death, they just looked sad. Beth was about to leave when she heard the sound. It was a small noise. A chirp, almost like a bird. It came from behind a sealed door marked with symbols she could not read. She forced the door open and found a survival pod. Inside, wrapped in thermal blankets, was a juvenile Ority. It was small, maybe the size of a human child of 4 or 5 years. Its scales were a pale green, not yet darkened with age, and its eyes were huge with fear. The creature was injured. Beth could see burns on its arms and a deep cut across its chest. It was shaking badly, either from cold or terror or both. For a long moment, Beth just stared at it. This was the enemy. This was the species that had killed her family, burned her home, destroyed everything she loved. She could leave it here to die. No one would ever know. No one would blame her. The juvenile made another sound. Softer this time. Almost like a question, Beth thought about her daughter. She had been 7 years old when she died. She had been afraid of the dark. Before she could stop herself, Beth was moving. She picked up the survival pod and carried it back to her ship. She sealed the hatch, started the engines, and flew away from the dead scout ship as fast as the Wanderer could manage. Her computer screamed warnings at her. Harboring an enemy combatant was a capital offense. If anyone discovered what she had done, she would be executed. The military did not care about reasons or mercy. War had made everyone hard. Beth ignored the warnings. She set course for Outpost 7 and turned up the heat in her cargo bay. Then she sat down next to the survival pod and looked at the small creature inside. That it looked back at her with those huge, frightened eyes. She did not know what she was doing. She did not have a plan. All she knew was that this creature was young and hurt and alone, and she could not bring herself to let it die. Beth reached out slowly and touched the pod's glass cover. The juvenile flinched but did not look away. She had been a xenobiologist once, before the war took everything. She knew almost nothing about Ority biology, but she knew enough about fear. She knew what it looked like in any species. She spent the next 6 hours treating its wounds with whatever supplies she had. She gave it water and warmth and kept her voice soft and calm. She did not know if it could understand her, but she talked anyway. She told it that it was safe. She told it that she would not hurt it. She told it that everything would be okay. By the time she reached Outpost 7, the juvenile was sleeping. Its breathing was steady, and its scales had regained some color. Beth carried it into her habitat unit and sealed the doors behind her. She was now a criminal. She was harboring the enemy. But as she looked at the small sleeping creature in her arms, she did not feel like a traitor. She felt like something she had not felt in 3 years. She felt like a mother. She named it Solace, after a word from a language she barely remembered. It meant sunrise. It meant new beginning. And in the darkness of war, that seemed like exactly what they both needed. 6 months changed everything and nothing at the same time. Solace had tried to kill Beth 11 times in the first week. He had bitten her, scratched her, thrown objects at her head, and once tried to strangle her with a power cable. Each time, Beth had simply bandaged her wounds and returned with food and water and that same calm voice that by the second month, he stopped attacking. By the third month, he stopped hiding. By the fourth month, he started watching her with something other than hatred in his eyes. Now, 6 months after she had found him, Solace sat in the corner of the lower level and watched Beth repair a broken heating unit. His scales had darkened to a healthy forest green, and he had grown nearly a foot taller. Ority Young grew fast, Beth had learned. Much faster than human children. She had also learned that they needed higher temperatures than humans. She had nearly killed Solace in the first week by keeping her habitat at normal human levels. He had gone cold and still, and she had panicked and cranked the heat up until she was sweating through her clothes. He had recovered, and she had never made that mistake again. The lower level of her habitat was now almost unbearably hot for her, but perfect for Solace. She had converted it into his space, filling it with blankets and heat lamps and the few objects he seemed to find comforting. Beth finished her repair and wiped her forehead. Solace made a soft chirping sound that she had come to recognize as curiosity. She held up the heating unit. Solace tilted his head, then pointed at the damaged coil inside. Beth nodded. She had noticed this about him early on. He understood machines. Even without words, he could look at a broken device and identify the problem faster than she could. His mind worked differently than a human mind, but it was sharp and quick. She handed him a small tool, and he accepted it carefully. This was new. For months, he had refused to take anything directly from her hand. Now he did it without flinching. Progress. Slow and painful, but real. Beth sat down on the floor a few feet away from him. She had learned that getting too close made him nervous. Personal space meant something different to Ority. They needed more of it. Solace examined the heating unit with careful movements. His claws were sharp, but he had learned to be gentle. He made a series of clicks and chirps, pointing at different parts. Beth did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. He was explaining to her what was wrong and how to fix it properly. She smiled. She had been doing it wrong for years, apparently. That night, after Solace had fallen asleep in his nest of blankets, Beth sat at her computer and updated her secret log. She had been documenting everything since the beginning. Solace's behavior, his diet, his responses to different situations. It had started as a scientific habit, a leftover from her days as a xenobiologist. Now it felt more like a diary. Day 183, she wrote. Solace accepted a tool from my hand today without hesitation. He also corrected my repair work on the heating unit. His technical understanding is remarkable. I am beginning to think that Ority intelligence has been vastly underestimated by human researchers. She paused, then added, he looked at me today without fear. Just for a moment. But it was there. Something like trust. A warning light flashed on her console. Supply ship approaching. Beth felt her heart freeze. Supply ships came every 3 months to Outpost 7. They brought food, fuel, and equipment. They also brought inspectors. She moved quickly. She sealed the lower level with a code only she knew. She covered the access hatch with storage containers. She adjusted the environmental controls to hide the heat signature from Solace's space. When the inspector arrived the next day, Beth met him at the door with a tired smile and a story about equipment failures. He was a bored young man who wanted to finish his route and go home. He checked her supplies, updated her records, and left within an hour. He never looked twice at the storage containers. After he was gone, Beth sat on the floor outside the sealed hatch and let out a breath she had been holding for hours. From the other side, she heard a soft tapping. Solace was awake and waiting. She opened the hatch and found him standing there, watching her with those large eyes. He made a sound she had not heard before. Low and soft, almost like humming. She did not know what it meant. But something in his posture had changed. He was not just tolerating her presence anymore. He was welcoming it. Beth felt tears in her eyes. She had not cried since her daughter's funeral. "You are safe," she told him. The same words she had been saying since the beginning. "You are safe here with me." Solace reached out with one clawed hand and touched her arm. Gently, carefully. The first time he had ever touched her without violence, he made another sound. 2 syllables, repeated slowly. Beth listened. She listened again. It sounded almost like her name. She laughed through her tears and nodded. "Yes," she said. "Beth. My name is Beth." Solace tried again. Closer this time. And in that small, hot room on a forgotten mining outpost, surrounded by the silence of space and the shadow of war, a human and an Ority took their first real step toward understanding. Neither of them knew what the future held. Neither of them knew how much harder it would become. But in that moment, none of that mattered. In that moment, they were no longer strangers. They were family. Solace finished rewiring the mining drill in half the time it would have taken Beth. 1 year and 6 months had passed since she found him on that dead ship. He was taller than her now, his scales dark green and healthy, his movements quick and confident. He spoke broken English with a clicking accent, and he called her guardian in his own language. "Guardian," he said, holding up the drill. "This design is bad. I made it better." Beth examined his work and shook her head in amazement. He had not just repaired the drill. He had improved it. The power efficiency was doubled, and he had added safety features that human engineers had never considered. "You are too smart for your own good," she told him. Solace made a sound that she had learned was laughter. "You say this every day." She did. Because it was true. They worked together now, running the mining operation that kept Outpost 7 functional. Beth handled the paperwork and the rare human visitors. Solace worked in the tunnels where no one would see him. Together, they had become more productive than Beth had ever been alone. But it was not the work that mattered to her. It was the conversations. At night, after the machines were shut down and the outpost was quiet, they would sit together in the heated lower level and talk. Solace told her about his memories of his family. His mother, a ship engineer. His father, a warrior who had died in battle before Solace was born. His older sister, who had taught him to fix machines. He told her about Ority culture. How honor and clan loyalty meant everything. How they valued strength but respected wisdom more. How their children were raised by the entire community, not just their parents. Beth told him about Earth. About oceans and forests and cities filled with millions of people. She told him about her daughter, who had loved animals and dreamed of exploring space. She told him about her husband, who had made her laugh every single day. Solace listened to everything. And one night, he asked the question she had been waiting for. "Your family died in the war. My people killed them." He paused, his eyes searching her face. "Why did you save me?" Beth had thought about this many times. She still did not have a perfect answer. "Because you were a child," she said finally. "Because you were alone and afraid. Because hate would not bring them back." Solace was quiet for a long time. Then he moved closer and touched her hand with his claws. "I am sorry," he said, "for what my people did. I am sorry." Beth squeezed his hand. She had not expected an apology. She had not needed one. But hearing it meant more than she could say. 2 weeks later, the patrol ship crashed. Beth saw it fall from the sky, trailing smoke and fire. It hit the rocky surface 3 miles from the outpost and broke apart on impact. She grabbed her medical kit and ran. She found 3 survivors. 2 men and a woman, all badly injured. The woman, whose uniform said her name was Grace, was the only one conscious. "Help us," Grace whispered. "Please." Beth worked for hours, treating burns and fractures and internal bleeding. She used every supply she had. She did everything she could. When she finally returned to the outpost, exhausted and covered in blood, Solace was waiting. "Humans?" he asked. Beth nodded. "Military patrol. Their ship went down during a fight with your people." Solace looked at her carefully. "Are they alive?" "For now. But they need more help than I can give." Solace disappeared into the lower level. When he returned, he was carrying a device Beth had never seen before. An Ority medical tool, he explained. He had built it from parts he had scavenged over the past year. "This will help," he said. "I can show you how to use it." Beth stared at him. "If they see you, they will not see me." His voice was firm. "But they will live." They worked through the night. Solace stayed hidden while Beth applied his treatments to the injured soldiers. The Ority technology was advanced, far beyond human medicine. By morning, all 3 survivors were stable. Grace woke first. She looked at Beth with confused eyes. How? She asked. That equipment. That's not human. Beth said nothing. Grace grabbed her arm. What did you do? How did you save us? Beth looked at this woman, this soldier who had been trained to kill Ority on sight. She thought about telling the truth. She thought about the consequences. I found some salvage, she said instead. Old alien tech. Got lucky figuring out how it worked. Grace did not look convinced, but she was too weak to argue. Over the following days, Beth nursed the soldiers back to health. She kept them far from the lower level, far from any sign of solace. She told them stories about life on the frontier, about the loneliness and the silence. But Grace watched her. Grace asked questions. Grace noticed things that did not add up. On the day the rescue ship arrived to take the soldiers home, Grace pulled Beth aside. That I do not know what you are hiding, she said quietly. But I know you are hiding something. And I am going to find out what. Beth watched the rescue ship disappear into the sky and felt fear settle in her chest. The secret she had kept for so long was starting to crack, and she did not know how much longer it could hold. Grace came back 3 months later, and she did not come alone. Beth saw the military shuttle land near the outpost and knew immediately that something was wrong. Grace stepped out first, followed by 2 armed soldiers. Her face was hard, her eyes searching. Beth met them at the door. Can I help you? Unauthorized power signatures, Grace said. Coming from your habitat. My superiors want answers. Beth kept her voice calm. Mining equipment. Gets glitchy sometimes. That I do not think so. Grace pushed past her into the habitat. Search it. Beth's heart pounded as the soldiers spread out. She had prepared for this. She had hidden every trace of solace she could find. But she knew it might not be enough. They found the sealed hatch in less than 10 minutes. Open it, Grace ordered. Beth did not move. It is just storage. Grace pulled her sidearm. Open it, or I will. The hatch opened from the inside. Solace stood there, tall and still, his scales gleaming in the light. He raised his empty hand slowly and spoke in clear English. I am the one you are looking for. Please do not hurt my guardian. The soldiers raised their weapons instantly. Grace shouted orders. The room exploded into chaos, but Solace did not fight. He did not run. He stood perfectly still, even as guns pointed at his chest, even as Grace screamed at Beth to get on the ground. Please, Solace said again. His voice was calm. She saved my life. She raised me. I mean you no harm. Grace stared at him like she was seeing a ghost. This is impossible. How long has this thing been here? 2 years, Beth said from the floor. Since he was a child. He is not a threat. He has never hurt anyone. It is an enemy combatant. He is a person. Beth's voice cracked. He saved your life, Grace. That medical technology that healed you and your crew, he built it. He showed me how to use it. An enemy would have let you die. Grace's weapon wavered. She looked at Solace, then at Beth, then back at Solace. The soldiers were waiting for orders. The moment stretched like a wire about to snap. Solace slowly lowered himself to his knees. I surrender, he said. Do what you must to me. But my guardian has committed no crime except kindness. Please let her go. Grace stood frozen. In all her years of fighting the Ority, she had never seen one of them surrender. She had never heard one of them speak English. She had never imagined one could care about a human life. She lowered her weapon. Everyone out, she said to the soldiers. Wait by the shuttle. Tell no one what you saw. The soldiers hesitated, but Grace's rank was higher. They left. For a long moment, there was silence. Explain, Grace said finally. All of it.So Beth explained. She told Grace everything. Finding the dying ship, the injured child inside, the years of learning, growing, building trust, the conversations about culture and family and hope, the way Solace had become more than a rescued creature. He had become her son. Grace listened without interrupting. When Beth finished, she turned to Solace. Why did you help us? Why save humans when your people are at war with us? Solace stood slowly. Because my guardian taught me that people are not their governments. Humans killed my family, but Beth saved my life. If I judged all humans by the actions of some, I would be no better than the war that separated us. Grace sat down heavily on a storage crate. This changes nothing, she said. You will both be arrested. He will be taken for interrogation. You will be tried for treason. Beth nodded. She had known this was coming. But 3 weeks later, when the Ority attacked Outpost 7, everything changed again. The assault came without warning. Enemy ships filled the sky, and drones swarmed the surface. Beth and Grace and the soldiers ran for cover, but the drones were everywhere, cutting off every escape route. Solace grabbed an old console and started working. His claws flew across the controls, entering codes faster than Beth could follow. "What are you doing?" Grace shouted. "Saving you." The drones stopped. One by one, they turned away from the humans and crashed into each other. Explosions filled the air as Ority machines destroyed themselves. Solace had hacked their network. He had used his knowledge of his own people's technology to disable their attack, but the cameras on those drones had seen him. The footage showed an Ority saving humans, protecting them, fighting against his own species. Within hours, that footage spread across every communication channel in the galaxy. The Ority High Command declared Solace corrupted and demanded his execution. The human military arrested Beth for treason, and Solace surrendered himself willingly. Because it was the only way to save her. As they led him away in chains. He looked back at Beth one last time. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." Beth watched him go, and something inside her broke. But it was not despair she felt. That it was determination. She would not let this be the end. Solace spoke for the first time in 2 weeks on the day he asked to record a message. The military research facility where they held him was cold and sterile. Scientists came and went, studying him like an insect under glass. They asked questions he refused to answer. They ran tests he endured in silence. But when Grace visited him alone, he finally spoke. "I want to send a message," he said. "To both species. To everyone." Grace stood outside his cell, her arms crossed. "Why should I help you?" "Because you know I am not your enemy." Solace moved closer to the barrier between them. "You have watched me for weeks. You have read the reports. You know that Beth was telling the truth." Grace said nothing. But she did not leave. Solace continued. "This war has killed millions on both sides. It started from fear and misunderstanding. I am proof that our species can live together, learn from each other, care for each other. If I can show them that, maybe the killing can stop. And if they do not listen, then at least I tried." Solace pressed his hand against the barrier. "My guardian taught me that doing the right thing is not about success. It is about trying even when success seems impossible." Grace was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded once and walked away. 3 days later, she returned with recording equipment. She told her superiors it was for interrogation purposes. She told the guards she needed privacy. She sealed the room and activated the camera. Solace stood before the lens and took a deep breath. He began in English, then switched to his own language, then back again. His voice was steady, his words careful. "My name is Solace. I am Ority. 2 years ago, I was found on a dying ship by a human woman named Beth Carter. She could have left me to die. Instead, she saved me. She raised me. She taught me her language, her customs, her values. She became my guardian, my teacher, my family." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I have lived among humans. I have seen their kindness and their courage. I have also seen their fear and their anger. They are not so different from us. They love their children. They mourn their dead. They dream of peace." Solace switched to pure Ority, the formal dialect used in sacred ceremonies. "To my people, I say this. I have not been corrupted. I have been educated. The humans are not monsters. They are people, as we are people. This war began from a misunderstanding about territory and signals. We attacked because we were afraid. They fought back because they were afraid. Fear has made us enemies. But fear is not truth." He switched back to English. "I know many will call me a traitor. I know some will want me dead. But I am not speaking for myself. I am speaking for every child on both sides who will die if this war continues. I am speaking for every parent who will never see their family again. I am speaking for a future where our species can meet as equals, not as enemies." Solace looked directly into the camera. "My guardian lost her husband and daughter in an Ority attack. She had every reason to hate me. Instead, she chose to love me. If she can do that, if one human woman can look past the worst pain of her life and see a frightened child instead of an enemy, then there is hope for all of us." He stepped back. "I offer myself as proof. Let me be the bridge between our worlds. Let me show you what is possible." Grace stopped the recording. Her face was wet with tears she had not noticed. "You know what will happen when I release this?" she said. Solace nodded. "Yes, they will tear you apart. Both sides, perhaps." He smiled sadly. "Or perhaps they will finally start listening. Grace smuggled the recording out of the facility. She uploaded it to every communication channel she could access. Within hours, it was everywhere. Human news networks, ORT relay systems, military frequencies, civilian broadcasts. The galaxy watched Solace speak, and the galaxy argued. Some called him a hero. Others called him a puppet, a trick, a propaganda tool. ORT hardliners demanded his immediate execution. Human extremists called for the same, but others listened differently. An ORT faction sent a secret message. We want to hear more. We want to talk. Human protesters gathered outside military buildings, demanding peace negotiations, and in a small prison cell on the other side of the facility, Beth Carter watched the recording on a smuggled screen and wept. The next day, a military admiral visited her cell. He was old and tired, and his eyes held doubt. "We are offering you a deal," he said. "Denounce him publicly. Say he manipulated you. We will drop all charges and let you go." Beth looked at him steadily. "And if I refuse, then you stand trial beside him. And you will probably die." Beth thought about her daughter. She thought about Solace. She thought about the future they had dreamed of together. "Then I refuse," she said. The admiral stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I thought you might say that." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it is worth, I hope you are right. I hope this is the beginning of something better." Beth watched him go. She had no idea what would happen next, but she knew she had made the right choice. The trial was held on neutral ground. A space station that had served as a trading post before the war turned it into a relic. Representatives from both species filled the observation gallery. Humans in military uniforms sat on one side. ORT in ceremonial robes sat on the other. Cameras broadcast everything to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Beth and Solace stood together in the center of the chamber, surrounded by guards from both sides. The charges were read aloud. Treason, harboring an enemy combatant, espionage. The list was long, and the penalties were death. Beth was asked to speak first. She did not beg for mercy. She did not make excuses. Instead, she told her story. She told them about finding a dying child on a broken ship, about learning to communicate across species, about watching Solace grow from a terrified creature into a brilliant young person, about the night he had apologized for what his people had done to her family, even though he had nothing to apologize for. She held up her documentation. Years of logs, recordings, observations. Proof that ORT Young were individuals with personalities and dreams and fears. Proof that they could learn, grow, and love. "That I did not save an enemy," she said. "I saved a child. And in saving him, I learned that everything we thought we knew about each other was wrong. We are not so different. We are both afraid. We are both grieving. And we are both capable of so much more than war." Then Solace spoke. He addressed the ORT representatives in their formal dialect, invoking ancient honor codes. He spoke of clan duty and the sacred obligation to protect the young. He reminded them that their ancestors had once made peace with enemies far more dangerous than humans. Then he turned to the humans and spoke in English. "My guardian lost everything to this war. Her home, her family, her future. She had every reason to leave me to die, but she chose differently. She chose hope over hate. She chose mercy over revenge. That choice did not make her weak. It made her the strongest person I have ever known." He looked at Beth, and his voice softened. "I am ORT by birth, but I am her son by choice, and I will stand beside her, whatever happens next." The chamber was silent. Then an elderly ORT rose from the gallery. She was tall and thin, her scales faded with age, her eyes sharp and knowing. She walked slowly down to the chamber floor, ignoring the guards who moved to stop her. She stopped in front of Solace and studied his face. "I know this one," she said in accented English. "He is of my clan. We thought him dead." Solace stared at her. "You are from my family. Your mother was my daughter." The elder reached out and touched his face gently. "We mourned you. We burned offerings in your name." Solace's eyes filled with tears. "I did not know anyone was looking for me. We never stopped." The elder turned to face the chamber. "This child is not corrupted. He is not a traitor. He is a bridge. He has walked between two worlds and survived. He has shown us that peace is possible." She raised her voice, addressing both species. "I am old. I have seen enough death to fill 10 lifetimes. I do not want to see more. If this child and this woman can find a way to live together, to love each other despite everything that separates them. Then perhaps we can too. The chamber erupted. Arguments broke out. Accusations flew back and forth, but something had shifted. The elders' words had cracked the wall of hatred just enough to let light through. 3 days later, both governments announced a ceasefire that it was not peace. Not yet, but it was a beginning. Beth and Solace were released and assigned to a neutral station. They were given resources to establish something new, a cultural exchange center where humans and Ority could meet safely. At first, only a few came. Curious scientists, nervous diplomats, families who had lost loved ones and wanted to understand why. But the center grew. More people came. More conversations happened. Slowly, painfully, the two species began to learn about each other. 5 years passed. The war officially ended with a treaty signed on the same station where Beth and Solace had stood trial. Both species agreed to shared territory in the neutral belt. Mixed settlements began to form. Old hatreds did not disappear, but new connections started to grow. Beth stood at the window of the cultural center and watched the latest group of visitors arrive. Human children and Ority young. Meeting for the first time, cautious but curious, Solace walked up beside her. He was fully grown now, tall and strong, his scales dark green and his eyes wise beyond his years. "You are thinking again," he said. Beth smiled. "Just remembering." "Remembering what?" "The day I found you." Beth turned to look at him. "I was so afraid. I did not know if I was doing the right thing. I did not know if you would survive. I did not know if we would ever be able to understand each other. And now I know that fear is not the enemy. Giving up is the enemy." Beth took his hand. "We built this together, Solace. All of it. Every person who walks through those doors, every conversation that happens, every friendship that forms. We made this possible." Solace squeezed her hand. "No, Guardian. You made it possible. I just followed your example." They stood together in silence, watching the children play. Outside, the stars burned bright in the darkness. Wars would come and go. Hatred would rise and fall. But somewhere in the vastness of space, a human woman and an Ority man had proven that love was stronger than fear. And that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.